Welcome to the Igniting More series on the Pregnancy Help Podcast. For more information on how Connie Coleman can help take your organization to the next level, click on the link in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to the Pregnancy Help Podcast to receive updates on all of our future episodes. Thanks for listening.
Hey, everybody. This is Connie W. Coleman with the Igniting More podcast. I'm glad you joined us today. Welcome in. Welcome back. We're going to dive in and get started. So pull up a chair, grab your coffee. We've got an interesting episode today. We have a center director from a pregnancy center who has called in and left a voicemail for me and asked a question that we're going to address together today. So let her introduce herself and tell us the question, and then we'll dive in from there.
Hi, Connie. It's Cheryl Bernard, Executive Director here in Wichita, Kansas, at a pregnancy resource center that's been around since 1993, A Better Choice. And as an innovative director, what strategies do you employ to foster progress when encountering a board or staff, or both, that could be hesitant to embrace change? How can leaders combat the sense of isolation that frequently arises in these situations? I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks, Connie.
Okay. So there is our question. And Cheryl is perfectly correct in describing herself as an innovative director. I've been blessed to work with her and her center a little bit. So I'm thankful that she called in. I'm thankful for this question. And the two-part question. What strategies that foster progress when faced with board staff or both that hesitate to embrace change? And how can leaders combat isolation frequently arising in these situations? And man, is that a packed question. This is what I love to do. This is why I love partnering with ministries. This is what I love to help people figure out and work their way through. So I'm thankful. This is a powerful question. And hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll have it fleshed out a little bit. So I'm just going to dive right into it. First of all, what I can tell you is the answer is the same for both questions. So you're not technically asking two separate questions. The answer is the same and works hand in hand to both bring people into the mission and excited about forward movement and innovation and all the things that are coming up in the future for an organization. And it also helps to eliminate those feelings of isolation that sometimes leaders get when they're in the trenches. So the same answer is this. You have to have buy-in, and that is built with common purpose and common potential. And so the kind of long, short answer that we'll flesh out is getting back to the basics. You have to get back to the basics. You have to all be on the same page. You have to know what your first love is, and you have to work your mission, vision, and purpose. Those back to the basics are vital. I work with a lot of pregnancy centers, and sometimes they've forgotten what their first love is. And anybody that forgets who their first love is, Scripture in Revelation says, I have this against you, that you have left your first love. And we don't want that. We become stagnant when we lose our first love. We go in or chaotic when we go in all different directions. And so we'll dive into all of this a little bit. But the short answer is getting back to the basics first, and then doing some futuring to see how our work, market, ministry, culture is changing and what we expect to see in those changes, and then come up with a strategic plan to maneuver from where we are, what our first love is as an extension of our mission and vision, what we're doing right now, and where we need to adjust. I love her description of being an innovative leader. That's what we need. We need some people looking at things differently, seeing what's coming not just in the center, but in the community. Again, we'll look at all of this, flesh it out a little bit more in just a minute. But that strategic plan and that futuring to see, okay, this is where we are. This is who we say we're going to be. How do we flesh that out and how do we move forward in that? When you get everybody rowing in the same direction and at the same speed, progress multiplies and isolation diminishes. So that is our goal, is to get everybody that's supposed to be in the boat in the right seat, rowing in the same direction at the same speed so that we can multiply our progress and get rid of the isolation. So we're going to break that down, like I said, getting back to the basics. Number one, we want to redefine and rededicate ourselves to what the organization's first love is. I touched on that just a little bit ago. I've been in organizations where sometimes the board is divided. Some of them feel that the first love is, and I'm just going to use this as an example. Some of them are, their first love is resourcing families. And then you'll have some members of the board that their first love is saving abortion vulnerable moms when they come in the door. They both serve, they're both valid, but we have to know what our first love is. And once we are all on the same page, whether it say the first love is saving babies. So that makes the resourcing an extension of whatever we do to save babies. It takes it from the first priority and re-puts it as a way to come alongside moms and dads when they come in and help them understand that they can do this and they can bring this baby to life and they can do all the things. They have people coming together, but you have to be on the same page. You have to define it and you have to be dedicated to it, because that first love must carry out not just as a stated first love, but it has to carry out in what programs you do. It carries out into how you budget. The priority of, if you have $100, are you going to spend that $100 to resource a family or to save a baby? And hopefully it never comes down to that, but you have to be that mindful of what your first love is. Next, you got to recommit and refresh your mission, vision, and purpose statements. Not just the words, but to the core. Do these things still represent exactly who we are, exactly what we want to do and what we say we want to accomplish? It can't just be words on a page. It has to be to the core, again, of who we are as the board, as the leadership of the ministry, as the executive director. We all have to be in agreement of where we're headed, what our purpose is, and how we're going to accomplish those things. And then the third thing is you're going to rededicate and respond to the purposes of the organization. Yes, but also the personal purposes that each person brings to the table in order to achieve the whole. What do I mean? Sometimes we have leaders, we have executive directors, or we even have board members who are in our organization because common values and because they love life and because they're gifted or talented. But some of them have never, number one, realized what their personal purpose is, and number two, made the connection to what they're called to do individually and how that comes alongside when they're sitting around that board table in board meeting, how it all comes in and what position they play, what role they play as a part of the whole. And so, yes, you have to know your mission, vision, your purpose of the organization. But then you want your individuals to really grasp hold of what their purpose is, what their God's given calling is, so that when they're walking it out, they know that their purpose aligns with the organization's purpose and they see how they fit and how they intricately can be used to accomplish the goal of the whole organization. It's vitally important that people understand that. I was just teaching a Bible study in the book of Acts, and in Acts 20:24, Paul says, um, I will give basically, the call of my life, the purpose of my life is to spread the gospel. I will give everything for that. And you almost want to sit back and just kind of golf clap because, way to go, Paul, you understand your purpose. But if we pull that scripture down and we say, okay, the purpose of my life, the thing I would give my life for, the thing the hill I would die on, what is that purpose in me? So that's the thing that I will go to the ends of the earth for. And I know that God has called me to this, and I would give my eye teeth to make sure that I'm accomplishing this in every aspect of my life. But then it becomes so real that it's what I'm also bringing to the table at the ministry I'm serving or at the business that I'm serving. We have to have it that airtight. We have to know our personal purpose and be acting out of in association or in agreement or in completion of what our personal purpose is. And we have to know that purpose for the ministry as well, because those two go hand in hand. And we will not be as powerful when we start serving if we don't know who we are, who we're called to be, and what God has for us to bring to the table as part of the whole. So those are the basics. Then we want to look towards the current and future needs that we want to serve. Now, one of the things is futuring. Now, we all do strategic planning. We're going to touch on that in a minute. Futuring is a little bit different. Futuring is a process, a systematic process for thinking about picturing possible outcomes and planning for the future. It includes watching trends and trying to envision what might happen. So, strategic planning is internal. Futuring is looking at the world around us, looking at what's happening, looking at technology, looking at social norms and social changes, looking at all the things going on in the world around us and trying to understand where that's going to lead us, specifically in our ministry in the future. It's interesting. It's talking about when this all began. The World Future Society said explorers often found themselves in situations where they had no idea what the future held for them. What was around the next bend, over the next mountain range, or across the next river was a complete unknown. They were forced to make decisions that were literally life and death. Sound familiar? Futurists can look to these explorers for guidance. So this is from encyclopedia.com, but it's very interesting. It says Edward Cornish, former president of the World Future Society, highlights 7 lessons that can be learned. So this is what we're trying to do. Number 1, prepare for what you will face in the future. We've seen a little bit of that with Roe. I don't think any of us were completely prepared for what we would see in the future. And maybe we should have done a better job of some futuring whenever Roe was in the process of being overturned. Number 2, anticipate future needs. 3, use poor information when necessary. I love that because we always want to base our information on the best statistics, the best information, the most accurate information we have at the time. Well, 10 years from now, we may understand that those numbers weren't quite accurate, but we use, even if it's poor information, even if it's incomplete information, we bring all the information we can get our arms around to the table. You expect the unexpected. Number 5, you think long-term as well as short-term. 6, dream productively. And 7, learn from your predecessors. All amazing. So you bring that and you bring that to the table and you say, okay, if this is what best guess we think our world or our community, the needs are going to be in the next 5 years. We're going to do some futuring based on what we think the needs are going to be, what the climate is going to be, if you will, and how we feel like we have been called to meet those needs. That's what futuring is looking like. Now, they even mention it in here. The second thing we need to look toward the future is we need to let ourselves dream. Sometimes we've gotten so, yes, the budget is real. Yes, numbers are real. Yes, there's the day to day and there's so much, but sometimes we have forgotten to let ourselves dream. We serve a big God who's bigger than any dreams that we can come up with. But he's able to give us dreams that he has for us. And sometimes we limit the voice of God in the organization and in the purpose of what we're doing because we're afraid to dream. We're afraid it's too big. We're afraid we're not enough. And so sometimes it's good to just sit back and say, hey, you know what? No holds barred. Money's not an object. Personnel's not an object. There's no limits. What would we dream? What needs would we dream about being able to fulfill? Now, people dream and then get stuck there. So that's where the next step, the strategic planning comes in, and vision casting. I do it where you make sure that you look at, number one, it's has several components. So you don't just dream and say, okay, one day we're going to achieve that. You come back and you say, okay, take something that's true about where we are right now, match it with a dream, and then put action steps in between that are true to our first love, our mission, and our purpose. It's a whole process. Strategic planning is so much fun, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But again, when you do strategic planning, you end up bringing people to the table because strategic planning isn't about the board or the leadership saying, well, we're going to do this and we're going to put this strategic plan in place so that someone else carries out what everything that we've dreamed up and decided and set deadlines for. Strategic planning requires those that are doing the planning to take the initiative to be the cheerleaders for the strategic plan, to be the instigators for seeing that the different pieces of the strategic plan come to fruition. Cheap, shameless plug. Heartbeat has a great strategic planning protocol. I do it in association with Heartbeat. I also do it on my own through Connie Coleman. But strategic planning, having someone from outside come in and help walk you through it so that everyone can just participate is such a rich key to doing some really strong strategic planning for your center. So you've gotten back to basics and you've done some futuring, some dreaming, and some strategic planning. All of these steps pull the entire team into action and remind them, or maybe get them to own for the first time their full purpose and driving force for their participation, and help them to know and appreciate their seat at the table. Whether you want to go by, I can't think of the book, I have it, Good to Great, and get their right seat on the bus, or in the example earlier of all rowing in the same direction to get their right seat in the boat. The goal is to get everyone focused, everyone excited about the next chapter of the organization and the lives that your work will be used to impact in even greater ways than it has before. That's the goal, is to get everybody on the same page. When you're all rowing in the same direction at the same speed, progress will multiply, and isolation will diminish. Thank y'all for joining today. Thank you for stopping in for Igniting More podcast. I think the world of y'all, and I will see y'all next time. Thank you so much.